one of the things I learned about LaMont was that motivating people in life, in school, in business is not a lot different. If they're motivated, they'll do
It's
great
true.
things. And I had a gift that I could speak, use music, things I have done in the past to motivate these people, and they would go out and break their necks to do great things.
Welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. I'm your host, LaMont Leavitt. In a world overflowing with noise, confusion, and distraction, we're here to cut through the clutter and explore bold, unique paths to a longer, healthier, and more vibrant life. Through candid conversations with business leaders, wellness experts, industry pioneers, and innovators, we'll uncover insights to help you discover your own personalized, unique approach to thriving. Tune in, trust the compass of wisdom within, and find your fountain of vitality. Hello, this is LaMont Leavitt, and welcome to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. We're thrilled today to have with us Larry Tallman. He's got quite an interesting story and life story, and we'd love to have him here today. And it's great to have you with us, Larry.
Thank you so much, Lamont. Glad to be here.
Well, Larry, tell me a little bit about you as far as your childhood. And we talked earlier about what your dad had told you about what you were going to do and be, and how that equates to that picture behind you.
I was privileged to grow up on my grandmother's farm in south of Chicago, 300 acres, which my dad then took over and farmed. And I spent my first 18 years on that farm in a small town about 50 miles south of Chicago, which now is all suburbs, but back then it was farmland. And Dad farmed it, and I had to help him. And of course, as many of your listeners probably know, you get up at 7:30 and you do chores, and you come home from school and you do chores, and it never ends. And Dad had his dream to have me take over the farm. And he and I had quite a number of discussions, we'll say, that I didn't want to be a construction worker, a factory worker, or a farmer. I wanted to wear a tie. And the tie was what lawyers, doctors, teachers, people did at that time. And that's all I knew that I wanted to do in my life was my dream.
Something like that.
Yes, something with a tie.
That's great. And so part of that tie journey of doing what you wanted to do, tell me kind of how that led in through your young years into college. And I didn't even know you'd play basketball.
Yeah, well, when you're in the Chicago area, basketball is king. And one of the coaches in the local area wound up going to the University of Kansas as an assistant. And he knew of many of us, including me. And I was recruited to go play basketball at Kansas and play there. Now, basketball was a different game. There was no dunking. There was no 3 points, none of that. Basically, a guy my size passed the ball to big guys. But I did get to go there and play basketball at Kansas and get my degree. And that was a step for a kid out of a small town in Chicago. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Basketball's fun. I love playing. In fact, I used to, when I was a kid, I used to think I'd get to 6 foot tall if I hung from my olive tree in the backyard. And I'd try, and it never happened, man. I never got to 6 foot. And I love basketball. So I had to stick with being a guard and being on the outside looking into the paint. But
well, I was a 6'1" guard, and that's small by today's standards, certainly. But we had great high school basketball teams, and that's how we got notarized. And the first year I was at Kansas, 11 of us were from the Chicago area.
Oh, fun. Cool. That's neat. Now, when you were in college, was that where you kind of started getting more interested in music? And tell me a little bit about that story and as you added more vitality to your life.
Well, my mother was the organist at our Baptist church in town for 60 years. And we were all required as her children to take piano lessons I'm not sure I was the best at it, but music was a big part of our life, playing, singing, and in small town America, you always played multiple instruments in the bands. So uh, when I got to college, I had two goals. One is music, and one was basketball. And so I majored in music while playing basketball. And
Awesome.
become a music teacher, the unique thing in the time was you had to learn every instrument up to a junior high level. So I went through every course to play every instrument in the orchestra up to a junior high level. And as a trumpet player, then I excelled in that one overall.
So of all the instruments, trumpet was your favorite one
That was
of
my
all.
main thing, and I somehow was gifted with that. So I played that throughout my career and well on after college. Yes.
That's cool. I was pretty much stuck with strings. I was a violin, viola, cello guy. I really wanted to play the drums, but my mom convinced me that it was just much too noisy. So
Yeah. Well,
I couldn't have that in the house.
When I had the cello, it was my favorite stringed instrument. I'll tell you that.
Me too, actually. I like the cello. Yeah, I could actually do the vibrato right. Where the violin was rougher for me. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Well, tell me. Okay, so you finished college. As far as then, tell me your story about how you ended up in Vegas and maybe some of the bands you played for there and who you met when you were in Vegas.
So the band director at Kansas had contacts everywhere, and he found out that the LA musicians that played in Vegas didn't want to be there in the summer when it was 110. And
Sure.
so they would hire interim people to come out there and play for 3 months when it's the hottest. And the place that did it was Caesars. And so he got us auditions, and I won an audition. So for 2 summers, I would go to Vegas and play in the Caesars band behind whomever the stars were playing there during the summer, and and on my trumpet. And I had that privilege, which was a great joy and a great training ground, because some of it was recorded and you could never miss. And I just want to point this out to our listeners. Just think if you could go to your job every day and you could never make a mistake. And I couldn't. That was the image I had to have, because in those days they couldn't fix it. If you made a mistake, the entire orchestra had to redo the entire song.
Yeah.
So the pressure was amazing. And I just thought that was a great level to remember when I got into business later in life.
Yeah, that's true. It's tricky with music too. You can kind of have a perfectionism mentality to get it right, and you got to switch from that to, in the business world, it's more of an MVP. It's got to be good enough to get the job done.
Yeah.
It's a whole different measure of perfection, right?
Right. And now today they can fix all that electronically, but we couldn't back then. So yeah. So it was a great experience, and I got to play behind some of the up and coming stars of the time: Tom Jones, Barry Manilow, Engelbert Humperdinck, and some older stars that came out there were trying to hang on to Hollywood somehow and sing and dance. So it was a lot of fun.
Well, so how many years were you doing that?
2 years, 2 summers.
2 years.
And then I'd go back home to school, and the LA guys would come back when the temperatures cooled down. So.
Okay, so you're playing for Vegas in 2 years in the summers. How in the world did you get from there into healthcare? What was the stepping stone, or how did that happen?
There's a journey that happened in between. In 1969, you might recall there was a lottery draft for the military for Vietnam.
Yeah.
My number came up, and the only way I could stay in college was to join the Air Force ROTC. So I joined them in 1970, and did the ROT and did training in the summers as well, which fortunately were in Las Vegas for the Air Force. And,
Okay.
and then I'd go to the gigs at night, and then when college ended, my basketball career was not going to the NBA. I wasn't big enough.
Yeah.
But I went over and was taken to Vietnam and served in the Air Force over there.
Thank you so much for your service there.
Well,
That's awesome.
There's so many guys that did much more than me. My war was way up in the air in airplanes. Theirs was on, but so after that was over in 1974, I came back and began teaching music for 1 year in high school in Kansas City. And then I was recruited by my former band director at Kansas to come to Michigan State and run the marching band for them. And so for 2 years, I got my education, my PhD at Michigan State. Every week we're on television with Michigan State. They had great football teams in those days. And
Oh yeah, I remember.
And I ran the basketball band too. And Magic Johnson was a freshman then. So I got to be there with him. And
that was 70s. That's true.
yeah, so
That's true. Yeah.
and then I went on my own and I became a professor at Augsburg College in Minneapolis, which is a Lutheran college up there, as the band director and the orchestra and everything. And I found out that people in the music, even professors, don't make much money.
Yeah, that's true.
So I had a full-time 9-month salary, also got paid to do summer work, teach lessons. I'm playing gigs at night. There's a studio up in Minneapolis that I did studio work for, and I'm still barely making it for my house, my kids, the whole bit. And the basketball coach comes to me and says, Larry, he's doing really great. He says, you should be doing better. My brother has an insurance agency in Minneapolis. He's making $100,000 a year just selling life insurance. You should go talk to him. And I did. And immediately I quit cold turkey and went into insurance. And
okay, so that was the beginning of the insurance side of things. Okay.
1981. And he gave me a chance, ultimately moving on to the head of sales for all of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And he took me with him. And that's how the journey got me in.
Okay. That was the stepping stone.
That was it. Yeah. And it
what
turned out it was a lot more lucrative than teaching, unfortunately.
So now you're Blue Cross. What did you learn at the Blues where you were at? And how long were you there before you transitioned over to UHC when you changed over to help them?
So I was hired. This is sort of interesting. I was hired to start a life insurance company next to Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota because they were nonprofit and they needed a for-profit subsidiary to put money into. And so I started that, which was owned and operated by Jack Nicklaus. Now think of that.
Really?
Yeah. And so technically I worked for him, even though I was an employee of the Blues. And so I did that for a year, and we put $25 million into that life company in 1 year. And I was then recruited to go to North Dakota to do exactly the same thing under the Blue Cross Blue Shield world.
Banner, yeah.
Did that for 6 years. And then after that, it's a little chilly in North Dakota, you might know, in the winters.
I can only imagine. Never been there in the winter.
So I transferred to Blue Shield of California in the LA, and I was there for the rest of my time. And I spent 20 years in the Blues. And during that time, I had every title you could even imagine, from CEO on down to every department in the company. And that was my 20 years in the Blue Cross system that got me to that point. So yes.
What are some of the good things you learned while you were in the Blues? over those years? What are maybe some of the top things that really was something you learned that you thought was pretty cool?
Well, let's go back to the dream of my tie because I wore a tie in
Yeah,
all those. and
that
and
you're on your tie now.
one of the things I learned about LaMont was that motivating people in life, in school, in business is not a lot different. If they're motivated, they'll do
It's
great
true.
things. And I had a gift that I could speak, use music, things I have done in the past to motivate these people, and they would go out and break their necks to do great things. And that was one of my success stories that I was able to bring to the table at each of these plans that I went to. And I always use music and motivation and so forth, not just for the one person, you're the boss or somebody, but for the masses. And because I had jobs that touched so many departments, they could relate to me because they'd say, Larry gets them. Larry gets me what we do.
Well, tell me how you use music to motivate. You're talking background music, or when you spoke, it was playing in the background, or what?
I use soft music during the workday, but when we were winding down at the end of the day and people's were getting tired and like that, we would crank it up and we'd get them going. They're in their booths and so forth and having fun. We had music of course, we had the blues love to have large conventions of their people, and we would do that.
Uh-huh.
I would use huge music from Hollywood for that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
you'd have people on their feet cheering, and they'd go back to work just like we're ready to go. And that was a talent that somehow I was given, maybe by my mother, with music to start with, but to motivate them to do great things, use their talents. So.
Oh, what a good message. Yeah, music's always a motivator for me. In every way. A lot of times you just have to unwind, whether it's rock or classical. You got to find what you need to get you going again.
Yeah, sometimes you
So
need the quiet music too. At least I did. So
that's true. To decompress. So from the blues where you use music, tell me about your journey into Optum and what you did while you were there. And did you still use music as a motivational tool when you were at Optum?
this would be interesting. So I leave in the fall of 2002 and of the blues. And in 2003, I'm hired as the head of all technology for a subsidiary that today, as you said, is called Optum. Back then it was called Ingenix.
I remember.
And Ingenix did coding like you guys do. It did all kinds of software, hardware. And my job was to run all technology to become the back room to healthcare across the world. That was their goal. And my very first meeting was in January of 03. I'm in Las Vegas, and we brought everybody from Ingenix in and had a giant thing, which included, as you can imagine, in Las Vegas, huge music and excitement about where we were going. And in my 3 years there, as I explained, we bought 28 companies of some of the greatest software companies in the nation to enhance it and to take over.
Yeah.
And we became the back room because I knew everybody through the blues and my competitors. We were the back room to Aetna, to Cigna, to everybody, to all the blues, because we had their software. And like you guys do, we were selling the codes to them too, like that. So,
Yeah.
we had great breadth, also, and it was a lot of fun. And we took it from, well, I won't give you the numbers, that might be a bit much, but we grew rapidly, we'll just say that. And so in 2005, the bosses called me, and much of that time I kept having to go to New York because some of the bosses were there. And they called me and said, Larry, you've done such a great job. We want to move you to Minneapolis now. Because what nobody understood was technology for them was driven out of Salt Lake City. And that's why I moved to Salt Lake and up to Park.
Okay.
That's from LA to Park City. And
Uh-huh.
and they said, "Oh, we're going to move the whole thing to Minneapolis." And my wife looked at me and said, "No, we're not doing that. No." So I left them, and that was my journey out of them. They were very generous. They took very good care of me, and I was privileged to work for them. So
Yeah. Hey, I got a question for you on just rebranding. This isn't not a technical question, but when you go from a name like Ingenix, I mean, you had everything from flyers to booths to messaging, and why the change to Optum? I'm curious. And then, what are the challenges when you have to rebrand something? I've talked to a lot of different companies that through acquisition, or they just have to change it because they feel they need to change. There's a lot of work with that. What have you learned
it
through the
happened.
rebranding
Yeah, it
changes?
happened after I left, but as I understand it, they felt Ingenix was too technology oriented, and they wanted to broaden with optimistic, Optum, make it bigger,
Oh,
and
okay.
because now they own hospitals, doctors, clinics, they own everything, and it's much bigger than just technology now. So I think
Okay.
part of it, and of course, it's a giant company now. So
Okay. So it sounds like, there's a company called MHN Behavioral Health. How does that tie into the above and what you
well,
did
when
next?
I spoke to you about my failure at retirement, and
Oh, yes.
yes, and I went to private equity for a while, several times, and then we would sell the company, and then finally I thought I was done, and a company called HealthNet in California called me, and they had been one of my biggest competitors when I was out there, and said, "We want to grow the company," and the chairman was in his 80s, and then sell it. And so I signed a contract to commute back from Park City to LA every week for 3 years. And then they would, at the end of that, say, "Oh, Larry, one more year, just one more, and take this over now and take this over."
Uh-huh.
It turned into 9 years. Yeah,
9.
of me
Nice.
commuting. And so during that time, I gradually worked and had a major part of every part of the company as we were building it to sell. And we did sell it in my seventh year to the Centene Corporation. They're out of St. Louis. And one of the contracts we had was called MHN International, which is the behavioral health company for all of the soldiers, active soldiers in the world. And we covered them around the world in 42 countries.
Wow.
And so at the end, that was my last job. So I became CEO and chairman of that company, as well as us in every state in the United States for behavioral health. And that became my end of my career when I had to travel. The government said executives had to show up at some of these sites around the world to keep the contract. And
Okay.
sometimes I go and like 5 Army Rangers are meeting me saying, "We'll be with you the whole time." And I'm thinking, "Oh, this isn't good," like that. So,
Right?
but that's what I did, and then that's when I retired from that. After that,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, so you've seen over the last several decades the change in the you know litigation, and we live in kind of a litigious society now. In your mind, that culture of a litigious society, how much does that affect healthcare, and maybe more importantly, even the patient specifically? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, we've gone through a huge transformation under Obamacare and some of that stuff. And um, I think one of the factors that is difficult for everyone to understand how intricate this is because the insurance company pays or doesn't pay the claim. And so they're the one blamed. But it's based upon laws that have been laid out by a state or federal government that's to pay this or not pay it. It's our contracts with the providers, the hospitals, the doctors, that we're committed to give them this much, which causes the premiums to be whatever they are. And then when the Obamacare comes in and says pre-existing and all preventative care has to be covered, that's when it shot up so dramatically, and people start expecting everything to be covered. And of course, it can't be covered totally. But I was so old that I remembered when we didn't cover pregnancy in some policies. So I mean,
Yeah.
uh, I think today there's a lot of misunderstanding, and I can tell you when the Blues were all nonprofit, they settled a lot of claims just to make them go away that they didn't have to, just to say we'll just settle this and it'll go away because they were nonprofit. But
Yeah.
because almost all the insurance companies are beholden to doctors, hospitals, even own some, as we said earlier, um, they have an obligation to have a return to their stockholders, and it's a very difficult thing right now. So
Yeah.
when a lawsuit comes, they probably will hold out to try to win it rather than just settle. So it's a litigious time for all of us. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you've had to deal with that in the world we live in. Sometimes there are a lot of people that think they're doing good and look down upon corporate America. Obviously, you're familiar with UHC and losing the CEO who was shot. Actually, it was about a year ago today. Even it's been about a year. I think it was in 2024. Um, just in your perspective, do you have any thoughts on how we get past that to where, executives can feel safe when they work for a known large entity, when they're just trying to carry out and then live their life? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I used to go on talk shows a lot in Los Angeles trying to spread the word of the good things we're doing. And I can remember at Blue Shield, now this is back in the late 90s and early 2000s, where we're paying $1 million an hour in claims. But nobody knows that. All they care about is their claim, really, like that.
Right.
And so I try to get the word out of the good things we're doing, the charitable things we're doing, the coverages that we're adding, and things like that, to help people be educated about this. I'm not sure that the big companies do that anymore. They talk much more to their stockholders about their returns and profits and subsidiaries and growth versus what they're doing for the public and taking care of clients. And I think that would be a step that they could move forward with.
That makes a lot of sense. And because some people just don't know all the good that corporations do, and part of it's just they don't talk about it, and they need to. Like Innovi Health, we do good things for different groups overseas to help them with education and training with tools. Uh, if you don't talk about it, nobody knows. Um,
I think, as
I
I
get it.
said, when I say I covered all the active soldiers in the world, people immediately say, "Oh, that's so wonderful that you're helping them." But if I said I'm covering Joe Blow in Lower Indiana, it makes no sense to many people. And I think we just
Yeah.
say, "No, we need to take care of Joe Blow too." So
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, okay, so your goal was your tie, and you did the tie for your through your life, and you achieved that goal. So what are your goals now that you're retired for the rest of the ride? How you plan on spending your time?
yeah, well, I think I keep in touch with old colleagues, try to give them guidance, open doors for them. Many times they'll say, "How do we get a claim process?" Some neighbor or like that, and I'll explain to them how it would work better if they did this and this. Uh, Sometimes I'll have them go back to their physicians or their hospitals and try to open a door that way. Uh, I try to get obstacles out of the way of people like that. And then, such as we're doing today, I appreciate being the opportunity, but to spread the word of there are good things that are happening every day that we just don't know about. And maybe this helped a little bit. And about the dreams that we all had that was so good to me in my life, but we should all follow our dreams, I believe. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's so true. And as far as following your dream, I've learned uh, in that process, if you have a dream of helping people in life and make that your goal, not so much the money. That's something my dad taught me when I was young. And put the people first, go about helping people, the money will follow. And I think if you keep that in mind as you're going out and serving in the world, trying to make a difference, you'll have a more fulfilling life. And you don't have to know where that journey is going, and it's okay. But just be along for the ride and enjoy it.
and here's the last thing I would say to you, because this is a great medium that you're sharing with people every week. But when I would give a speech over the many, many years wearing that tie, somebody would say, I really needed to hear that. I never knew who that would be, but whatever it
Yeah,
was, they really did. And you knew you're doing the right thing if you helped one person, even if there were 1,000 of them out there. So
yeah. Great message. Great. So thank you so much, Larry, for your time today. Loved hearing the journey of your life and how you served people through music and healthcare, and even connected the two. That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Larry, and we'll talk to you again soon.
thank you so much, Lamont. Appreciate it. Bye
You
bye.
betcha. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Fountain of Vitality podcast. Head to fountainofvitality.com for more episodes, insights, and resources. Remember, your health is yours to own. Take charge, focus on what you can control, and keep exploring what works for you. Always be your best self, lift others, and trust the compass of wisdom. Until next time, stay vibrant and take care.